Hello everyone, I'm Jerry Buckley, President at Reedley College. I'd like to welcome you to the 2021 Reedley College STEM Conference. I'd also like to talk to you a little bit today about your career paths and my own, and share with you some of the experiences that I've had so that you have more information to work from as you go through your career path. Like many of you, my compass pointed to a particular direction early in life. In fact, in high school, I knew that I was going to be a scientist in some capacity. I became very interested in biology and took as many courses as I could in high school, and in fact, excelled at that to the point where I was actually invited to become a coordinator for a special annual trip to Baja California that took place each year from our high school. We traveled 250 miles south of the border to Bahia San Luis Gonzaga, where we did an ecological survey of all the animal and plant life in that particular location. We took roughly 50 vehicles on that trip, and it involved practically 80 people. If you can imagine, I was 16 years old at that point, and I was coordinating that size of an enterprise. Now, it may sound like a great experience up front until you really find out about the details. As you probably realize, nothing in life works as you sometimes plan it. In this particular case, the car that I was supposed to be traveling in on this expedition broke down on its way to my house that morning as we were preparing to leave. And by the way, that same vehicle, which was 4 hours behind us, consistently with the rest of the caravan, caught on fire in Baja and burned. And so I was left without a vehicle for the rest of the trip. So I'd simply mention that from the standpoint that all of us have crises of different magnitudes throughout life and at different points during life. So even though you may be in charge of something, doesn't mean it's going to be an easy situation to lead through that particular activity, whatever it happens to be. Nonetheless, this particular expedition was completed. We wrote the annual report on this, and I moved on to the next challenge in life, which, by the way, opened the door for me to get into University of Southern California a year early. So when you take a look at my college experience from about 1972 to 1976, I was at University of Southern California, one semester of which I got to spend on Catalina Island. But I got into USC in what was called the Resident Honors Program. That particular opportunity probably came to me because of the work that I had done in high school. It opened that door for me. So I got into college a year early. Today we would call that dual enrollment. They didn't have that title back in the early 70s. From that particular experience, I went on to other things, and you can see the list of my training on these next couple of slides. I'll come back to these in just a moment, but I want to point out that some of the most enjoyable time in my life was actually working with fish in the study of ichthyology in my master's program, as well as the latter part of my bachelor's program. In fact, I collected a specific kind of fish called a monkey-faced eel off the Central California coast below Hearst Castle, to be exact. So I was very much engaged with applying my knowledge of anatomy and physiology and really the ecology as well. I had planned, in fact, on taking my bachelor's degree and some of my master's research, and I had hoped to actually become a state park ranger, a naturalist. And in fact, I had purchased my uniform. I had been hired by the State Park Service, had my uniform, I had my name tag, I was ready to go. And then a certain governor by the name of Jerry Brown, you may have heard of him, in his first elected tour as governor of the state of California, cut the budget the day before I was supposed to start my career as a state park ranger. Changed my life, changed my career path. And in fact, I ended up going a completely different direction because of this budget challenge. And I found that those skills that I had developed over my bachelor's degree and master's degree actually applied very much to healthcare. So those practical skills that I learned about in terms of laboratory sciences my ability to create test equipment and utilize test equipment in a laboratory environment allowed me to adapt those skills into hospital life, and specifically working with certain types of medical devices. In fact, by the mid-'80s, I had been recruited within the healthcare system to be a clinical engineer working on the artificial heart. And in fact, that work more or less exponentially expanded into other clinical research devices, other what we call cardiac assist devices at that time. So up through about 1990, I was really engaged in both clinical care and also with this clinical research of various medical devices, and actually built one of the first clinical databases in San Diego to help gather data for the physicians and other personnel to publish research papers. So that was really a very enjoyable part of my life. I then realized, though, that having just written a grant and expended the money from that grant over about a 3-year period, that I had to either recommit to staying in healthcare or find something else to do with my life. And I'd always really wanted to teach. And I had the opportunity come to me in the form of an invitation from the local community college, Grossmont College in San Diego, to join the team there as a specialist in medical electronics. And so I became, over about a 5-year period, a full professor, reaching about 50 students a year in a 2-year program that trained people how to work in the cardiac sonography area, as well as what we call the cardiac cath lab. So I really stayed within teaching for about 15 years and did just about everything someone can do in the community college system, meaning that I joined our academic senate, became a leader there. I became vice president of a faculty union. I later became, in a different capacity, vice president of a middle managers union as well, and continued some of my research activities in between. But I realized that after teaching for 15 years, I really was interested in another way to reach more people in terms of education. So I stepped up to being a dean over the STEM area at Grossmont College. And I realized that whereas I was only really reaching 50 students a year in the classroom, I could really reach about 5,000 students a year by being a middle manager or dean over an entire division at that college. And I did that work for about another 5 years and did other things. I actually stepped into institutional research and other capacities while I was working as a dean. And about that time, by the way, is when I actually re-engaged with higher education and earned my doctorate. I also then realized during that doctoral program that I could reach even more students if I continued to follow the ladder, so to speak, and take higher office. So I then became a vice president over instruction at Miramar College, then eventually up at Santa Clarita, where I was actually the assistant superintendent of instruction there in a single college district. Stayed within the North LA County area for about another 6 years, and then came here to Reedley College, where I became president. And now I have the ability to affect about 13,000 students a year because of the work that I do. And what is it that made me follow that path? If you think back to my original choice, although it was somewhat imposed on me in terms of entering into healthcare, I realized that I enjoyed working with people, serving people, and actually having an impact on people's lives. That's really what healthcare is all about. Well, what I found out when I joined Grossmont College, I found that education was very much like healthcare. It's about serving people. It's about changing lives. But I also realized that as time went by, that it was important to be able to impact more people. At least in my context, my compass kept pointing to service. And so that pathway that led me to higher and higher office, to the point of becoming president, built upon all my prior experiences. And oh, by the way, I should also mention that I brought with me this context of my education and training in the sciences. Everything I've done has been with that context of anatomy, physiology, biology, chemistry, 7 semesters of chemistry, including protein chemistry, experience in graduate school with basically molecular biology. And so now, if you look at what's been going on this past pandemic year, as we basically see the development and release of new forms of vaccine based on mRNA, I had probably more knowledge than most college presidents about what that meant and what its risk factors were or were not for the public that would be receiving that vaccine. So I felt actually better prepared during this pandemic to convey messages to our community and to our students about the pandemic and what we needed to do in response. So just pointing out to you that we are the sum of everything that we encounter in life. We are unfortunately required to make adjustments in our career path based upon those things that happen to us. And I would simply point out to you that when you think about the essential skills for any career, and you think back to your career here at Reedley College, we've taught you about effective communication, verbal communication, communication in writing, technical reading, critical thinking, the ability to work in teams, time management, project management. All of these are what we would call transferable technical skills in addition to what you pick up from your discipline area. The skills I've listed today are probably more important to you than any others, because no matter what you have to do to basically earn money, those are skills that will basically make you successful. We sometimes change our career path, but those skills are a constant. So I point out to you again, you need to think about certain questions in your life. What will you do if you can't find a job initially in the discipline that you really want? Are you aware of careers related to the one that you really want? What's a good way of increasing the odds of finding a job in the career path that you're interested in? And how will you prepare yourself for that first crisis that will come to you in life? I guarantee one will happen, at least. What are agencies that can help you during a crisis? If you've been a student here at Reedley College, you know we offer many different forms of counseling. We have a food pantry. We've been able to connect you with special financial aid packages over this crisis of the pandemic. What would you do next time? And above all, what is your 5-year plan? What additional professional development opportunities are you going to pursue, like I pursued my doctorate later in life, once you find the dream job and you're in a career path? We never stop learning. We are always going to be exposed to conditions where we must continue to grow and evolve and adapt. So I leave you with these thoughts as you enter into your career path, and I wish you the best, and I hope you have a great conference. Thank you.